So I just finished making all the main cast of Digital Circus in Blender. I don't really know what drove me to do this, aside from it just being a really cool thing to have, but I really like how they all came out, so I just wanted to make this quick video to show them all off. I'm going to try and do it live, so apologies in advance. I'm not the best at talking. This is my second attempt though. My last recording was over an hour long and I'm not going to edit all that. And before I go into everything, I've just released these models on Gumroad. I took so long working with the other recording that I actually just finished all the models, so I'm just going to release them now. Everyone individually is $5, and Pomni is free. Also, if you buy them all as a group, it'll only be $15. I do at least want some kind of payment for my efforts, but I also don't want to make them too expensive, so I feel like that's a fair enough price. Also, I'm making this video just to show off how I actually made the models and how they work, but I'm also thinking of making a video just explaining how to use each model and rig for beginners. The script I wrote for it feels pretty long, so tell me if you genuinely want something like that. It'll take a bit to produce, so I really need a bunch of people to really definitively say they want it. I feel like if it's going to be too much effort and not enough people are going to be into it, I'll just release the script itself as a text-based tutorial, with images of course. But also, each model has a readme to explain in more concise detail on how to use them, mostly just including things that are unique to the model individually, so the tutorial would genuinely just be for true beginners. So tell me in the comments. Anyway, let's get on to the models, starting with Pomni. So here's Pomni. As you can tell, and it's going to be the case with all of them, this design of Pomni is kind of altered from the Caine design, because it's just how I started drawing her in 2D. So that's where that part of the inspiration came from. But yeah, as you can see with all these characters, except for Gangle and most of Zooble, I just kind of used a Rigify rig base to build them out. The normal human parts out, and then I just kind of added on whatever else I needed for the face and the other details that aren't kind of built into the Rigify rig. So yeah, there isn't really that much to say about the actual bodies of all these characters, because you can just look up a Rigify tutorial for all that stuff. I did actually learn how to create my own manual rig layers here, which is nice and pretty. I just learned how to do that recently, so that we can turn off all these other bits that we don't need to see because they're all just kind of a part of the Rigify rig, but and all these other parts of the Rigify rig as well, technically. Yeah, I can at least explain some general things that all the characters have, which is one of the main things is the material that I use kind of for all their basic kind of colors. The main part of it is this little bit here, which I labeled it somewhere else, I think. Yeah, the light limiter thing. I don't really know what it's really could be called, but I got it from an anime style tutorial. And basically all it does is just that it just limits the light as it kind of, suggests. Yeah, basically it is you can control how dark the darkest part of the shadows are and how light the lightest parts of the body are. So yeah, you can see I go here and then you can see the shadows get darker and darker as I turn that down. So I use this to keep a very kind of stylized look that is more complex and more controllable than basic kind of shader RGB plus color ramp kind of a thing. And on top of that, they all have the Fresnel and ambient occlusion kind of thing going on, so just have a nice kind of rim to them and shadows. Yeah, I mean, I can't really explain too much about the body because it's all just, I built out the character, just not really any kind of interesting details I can give to that because it's just kind of building out models generally, but so I'll just go into the face rig and how all that stuff works. So basically, so many of the characters kind of rely completely on booleans for their entire facial kind of stuff. So if I go into here and reveal them all, you can see these are the booleans that are actually cutting out her eyes, and these are the booleans that actually come down and actually reveal her eyelids when I pull them down. So yeah, those are the booleans for the eyes. Just hide them to get rid of the bottom part, but her mouth is also a boolean, and it just kind of cuts out a big shape inside of her mouth to create the the mouth, the inside and the outside. These parts of the rig actually kind of just control each shape very concretely. There's not really any kind of special shape keys going on. It's all just plain rig, and they just kind of sync up with each other, and all the eyelids, well, they don't sync up. Well, yeah, they can be kind of messy considering just kind of cutting out parts of the face, but that also means that they're also very expandable, and you can just kind of control different parts of it by pulling them out or in or whatever. Yeah, one thing that's interesting about her mouth boolean is that she actually has this lip kind of thing going on, which is actually a geometry node set up. All it is just that it kind of converts the intersection point from the mouth boolean and also the a fake head that exists in the model because for some reason you can't work with the actual like head you're using the Boolean with. Yeah, it just kind of like takes the edges from that, converts them to a curve, and then adds thickness to the curve and material and shade smooth, and it creates this like really nice kind of like semi-ellipse thing going on. But yeah, I found that from me modeling XJ9 like a while back. It's like a perfect use case for that kind of a design. Yeah, I even have some bones to control where her blush is. If you ever shrink in her eye, you'll have to move the blush alongside it to get it into the right place. And it actually edits the texture of the face itself, so it works well with the Booleans. Yeah, I mean, this hair material is actually just kind of taken from another character, where I can just show it on screen really quick just to, if anyone wants to use it. Yeah, just kind of it's like a gradient that turns into like a slight noise, and also with the Fresnel, and also this fake anisotropy kind of thing, where it works really well in Eevee for like a kind of fake kind of shine look, like how you want with hair. Yeah, I use that on a lot of like the silky kind of models to get like that kind of a look. And it kind of is meshed with this little bit that just creates like hair strands. So it looks kind of like just like a slight like suggestion of hair strands that doesn't actually like kind of look too realistic, because of course she doesn't really need realistic hair. But yeah, it's like a nice little thing to have. Oh yeah, and the main thing about her eyebrows and all her facial expressions, they're actually a grease pencil that's just kind of like, you know, drawn on top of the face. So you can see in these layers here, I actually have a bunch of like the saved expressions for every like pose that I have saved in pose mode. So yeah, that's all mapped out there. I actually did a thing where I kind of like drew out every single possible like wrinkle you could possibly have on the face, just so people who don't have like a tablet to draw things on can actually just kind of like go into like the edit mode and then, you know, grab one of these and like get rid of it if they don't want it. And they just like mess around with the whole like kind of selection of like possible things there. And they can also pull it around all the control points and all that. So that's like a nice thing to have. It's also easy for me if I don't feel like drawing anything out. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all there is for her. There isn't really any kind of super special thing going on. There's just kind of some facial controls plus the humanoid meta rig from Ragatha. So yeah, I can go on to Gangle next. Actually, one quick little thing I forgot about Pomni is all these switches. Every single one of my models has like a switches thing here that I just kind of add a bunch of custom properties to change things in the model. So for Pomni, she has these different iris shapes. It's like they have the shiny eyes, blank eyes, and squiggly eyes that actually animate, even though you can't really see them that well, but you can kind of see how they work. So yeah, that's just kind of like a little thing that every model has. Okay, so this is Gangle. So I made Gangle second because I was actually planning on making a music video with her. So yeah, I made a really quick model of Gangle like a long time ago. It took like an hour to make, just like the model itself. And then of course over time I kind of polished it and rigged it, and the rigging was like decent enough, but it took me like 4 like different tries at this point to get like a satisfying rig, and I think I finally have something. But I also can admit that it's also like not even like complete at this moment because I just want to get the recording done. I basically have like, this is the part that I'm going to use for real, but I'll explain everything anyway, just in case you want to like learn something about. But yeah, about the music video, it was like a big undertaking, of course, but yeah, I'll probably show some things on screen just kind of like see if you want to actually see the rough cut so far. If you really want to see the rough cut, then just kind of ask me like anywhere directly, and then just I'll send the link to you. And I mean, I'll probably just post the link like publicly at some point, but yeah, that's that. All that is going on, but it's completely separate from the rig itself, I guess. So yeah, basically all of Gangle's rig is completely handmade, of course, because it's much more of a weird character than everyone else. I guess starting with the mask, these are just kind of like basic Bezier circles. And each of these bones controls each of these, you know, handles, just like you're editing in edit mode. So you can just kind of grab these and pull them around, like scale them up and around, and to make nice, like basically infinite expressions. So yeah, it's really useful for like having a very expandable face that isn't like technically super simple, but the main like kind of draw of it is the fact that they're geometry nodes. So yeah, basically all this does is it kind of just converts the curve into like a mesh. It just kind of, you know, does the usual stuff. I also have a tongue rigged up for it eventually. And then kind of just over here, and then shrink wraps onto the mask. So yeah, that's how all that works. It's in for the mouth, of course. Yeah, the old part of the rig up here was just kind of like a very basic kind of FK setup where it just kind of like curls the thing in when I move it around. It's not really that useful because it doesn't really have that much like kind of like customizability or whatever. So yeah, I was definitely going to change it no matter what. But yeah, that's the main part that I changed currently. But for the feet, this is basically kind of just like a spline IK kind of thing, where it's just kind of like a big string of bones that kind of maps itself to a curve, and then these bones actually kind of move the curve itself, and then of course that moves the bones that are actually affecting the leg. But on top of that, I actually have like IK bones, like normal IK bones. They can control like normal IK stuff. So yeah, that's how that works. And the control bones are just parented to the relevant IK bones. Yeah, of course, one of the main issues with this is that for some reason, like whenever you turn like the body, it just kind of like twists the actual ribbons themselves for some reason. Because I guess because that's how the spline IK works. I don't even know. But yeah, the new method fixes that, so I don't need to care about that anymore. It's a fixed issue. For the new method, it's actually the same thing that like I'm using with the Zooble, because it's just like a very kind of useful kind of, I think it was from a squash and stretch tutorial, or just kind of like parenting this kind of a bone to a lattice, and then it'll squash and stretch things easily. But I realized it could be used for very good for like a very stretchy kind of arm. So yeah, I'll probably explain more when in Zooble's rig, because it actually is more visible there. But yeah, that's that part of like the basic kind of arm rig that works now. Of course, we also have like the hips and the chest that are both going to be changed up a little bit. I'm going to probably change every little bit of the rig to this new kind of format. Yeah, the more interesting one is actually this. This is actually a grease pencil line that's being converted through geometry nodes into a ribbon. So you can just kind of go into draw mode, just draw a ribbon, and it just works instantly. So yeah, using this method, you can kind of like create like infinite variability in whatever like Gangle expression you want, assuming the other rig isn't actually good enough, which is probably better for like simple stuff, but this is better for like everything else. And you know, the geometry nodes is actually probably the most complicated geometry nodes I've had to deal with so far. And I can't even really like explain in full what's going on, because it was actually kind of all basically designed by like one guy on blenderartists.org named Zorito. I literally just asked on the forum, like, oh, how do I do this? And then he just basically like, he constantly kept answering all my questions and helping me out like in every single like kind of part of this. So basically this is all kind of his design, and like I can basically just completely thank him for it, because he just did it all for free, no like payment or even like credit at all, but I'm gonna credit him in anyway. But yeah, it just kind of like, you know, starts with the curve, and then I guess it converts the grease pencil to the curve, and all this like math stuff I don't understand. And this is where all like the kind of stuff, like the hands are actually like a separate model, but the base is actually just a quadrilateral that's being kind of strewn along the entire thing, and all this other stuff that, you know, I don't know how to explain, but you can also just look at it and replicate it if you needed to. Yeah, there's even like gizmos down here that I technically didn't want to like use anymore, because they felt harder to animate than just, you know, using these bones, which I use now. So you can just kind of like rotate these, and then it'll rotate the arm. And these are for the legs as well. So yeah, that's definitely much more like animatable in my eyes. But yeah, that's definitely the most like interesting part about this whole process. Yeah, I mean, apart from that, that's basically all there is that's notable about Gangle. It's just kind of, there's not really that much, but it's all like kind of complicated and unique stuff. Yeah, and for all Gangle's switches, there's a bunch of them, but there's not really, I don't know how many I'm actually going to keep. Basically, these just kind of control whether or not the grease pencil arm is visible, or the actual like rigged armature is visible. And also here we actually have a comedy mask. And I also have like a broken version of the comedy mask that I saved for the key art. And also here I have the tiers toggleable, so you can actually have her in a comedy mask form like normally as well. So yeah, you can go on to Ragatha next. This is me from the future again, just to say that I finished the actual full rig of Gangles, just to show it off. So, I mean, yeah, it's just everything you'd expect, pretty much. Works really well, though. Now, this is Ragatha. So when I was like in the middle of rigging Ragatha, I made a like poll on Twitter, just because I was like getting kind of annoyed with all the stuff I had to do that was actually surprisingly complicated with her. And of course, she was voted the lowest in the poll, because no one really thought she was being that hard to rig. But she basically gave me the most trouble, except I kind of like, after I did Zooble, I kind of realized that was a little bit harder technically. But yeah, Ragatha was still the most like surprisingly annoying than you'd expect. Yeah, like Pomni, she just kind of has like the humanoid rigify rig at the bottom, alongside of the dress controls and stuff like that. But the main thing that was actually kind of annoying with her is actually her like patches, like her eyelid and all her hair strands, because like all her patches are kind of like using a surface deformed thing, but I try to like kind of map them like just with a normal armature to the body, but since they're like different like levels of detailed and they didn't really work out that well, which is just kind of like a little thing, but also now I have to deal with the like turning down the subdiv, and now although all of them will break apart and stuff like that, it's kind of annoying. But I ended up using a lot of surface deformment on all the models, so I guess that's just like a normal thing with the models anyway. Yeah, the next was her eyelid, which is like obviously the bottom is like a normal Boolean eyelid, like I have with like most of the characters. But the top one is actually a bunch of shape keys to kind of like sort everything out, because of course I needed to get the eyelash to follow along with everything. But I really wanted to try and like get the Boolean to work with it all, but it was like really hard and annoying. So that kind of gave me a bad taste in my mouth about that, even though it was like not really that bad in the end. Because I'm pretty sure shape keys are kind of like standard for stuff like this. Although her like fine-tuned version of the eyelid doesn't really like work that well if you kind of like, you know, move it outside of the normal kind of mid-range of the eyelid. So just kind of have to deal with that as you're like using it. Yeah, definitely the most annoying bit was actually the hair. Because at first I know I wanted to like kind of keep this kind of like weird kind of strand thing going on, because that's how I kind of drew her in 2D. But of course I realized parts of the way through that actually adding all these extra like little details and like little bits to the mesh actually like really messed up the weight painting and all that. So I then had to go back and like recover like an old version of it where I actually had to like, you know, separate every single strand and weight paint them all as I wanted, and then like data transfer them all individually, and then I had to like create bones for every single hair little bit, and it's just like it was just like a lot of like extra work for nothing really. But yeah, of course, since I knew I wasn't going to actually animate every single strand individually, I have these like controls kind of pull out like all the different strands just like a little bit, just in case you needed that little bit of rotation. But yeah, that was like a lot of effort. Oh yeah, even after I finished everything and everything felt fine, her like Rigify buttons broke. So I had to like completely redo the rig, which also meant I had to redo all the constraints on every single hair strand, which is just like another little like top on the cake or whatever. But yeah, at this point it's just all done now, so I don't have to care about it anymore. But yeah, for mouth is like the only thing is like the one I knew exactly how to do it, and it was like all worked out perfectly in the end. So it's all just, it's kind of like how Jax and Pomni's mouth work, where it's just kind of like you pull out these control points and it opens the mouth and however you want, and all shrink wraps to the face, so it's like super like easy and expandable. And even on top of that, I have this little like mouth bone, which I might change the look of later, where you just kind of pull it up, it'll actually turn her mouth into like a teeth texture. And if you pull it up even farther, it'll turn into like a tongue-ish kind of a thing. So that's how those things work. It makes it like a really solid mouth, I think. And I mean, that's pretty much all of it. I'm definitely glad that her like hand worked out pretty well, because like even though it kind of looks bad in like a normal kind of a rig sense, where everything's kind of like bending along with it and doesn't really like that kind of like naturalistic, it actually really works with like the ragdoll aesthetic, so it actually like looks pretty good. Yeah, everything else is you know, pretty standard. I actually have a bunch of switches as well for different things. For one, it's of course I have a cleaver that I modeled. I think that one's just in the air. So yeah, this one's actually parented to her head, so you can actually always have her thing in her head. Or I think these are actually parented to her arms, so you can actually have her holding it as well. Even on top of that, I have this stupid level meter. We can just kind of up it, and now she has like a stupid kind of blush on her face. Yeah, it definitely looks all pretty good, which I'm glad, because I really liked my redesign of Ragatha, all the hair and everything else. So now we can definitely go on to Jax next. So here's Jax. He's basically the simplest one of them all, because he's mostly just the humanoid Rigify rig thing. So I can basically just skip all this junk, because it's kind of just all the same stuff again. But yeah, his face, of course. Like if you saw the peeled Jax render that they revealed, it just kind of looked like a Boolean would work super well. So of course all of his eye parts are Booleans. You could just like move around like Ragatha's mouth or Pomni's mouth or whatever. So it's all a similar kind of function. So yeah, they'll just kind of like cut into like an outer kind of purple layer, and then just reveal the yellow inside. And you have the controls for the eyes, and you can shrink them however you want. Yeah, it's very expandable. They even have like a teeth meter here, where you kind of like rotate or move around where the teeth is, and scale it in to kind of like shrink them in if the expression is super small. So yeah, that's very handy as well. And in switches, I actually have the the way of toggling whether his eyes are like, or his eyes and mouth are actually kind of like rounded or not. So here you can kind of like click that on, and now his eyes are rounded if that's the kind of expression you want, especially for like the mouth where it's like you really want like some expressions to be very rounded and not sharp. But yeah, even on top of that, I actually have a turned off version where you can actually use that if you want to like have a really kind of closed expression like this. It's like pouty face. Yeah, and then you can just kind of draw the actual closed eye or closed mouth or whatever. Of course, I think I have all that stuff saved as everything as well. You can see all the different, like the big smiley mouth, a big frown or whatever, and then all the closed eyes as well. So yeah, that's just how you do that. Yeah, of course, on top of that, I actually have this mouth as well. So I have extra controls for this kind of a mouth, where I just kind of pull around these things. And these are actually the same kind of style of rig as Gangle's arms and Zooble's arms and all that. It just kind of bends around his face, so he can just create like really like wild expressions. Even like pull down or like pull up his mouth, so he can like have like a very like kind of crazy, like anything you really want in the end. It's infinitely expandable, but yeah, you have to use it in very small situations, I guess. But it's nice to have. Now for Kinger, who's also really simple. This is one of the cases where I knew from the start how to do like every little bit of his rig, and it all worked out perfectly well. So that's like really satisfying. Basically, the way his whole body works is that it's just a Rugify kind of rig as well, but it's actually just like a single IK leg instead of, you know, two. So you can kind of just like pull down his torso and then it'll bend as you'd expect it to. You can even like pull out these little bits here to kind of edit where everything appears, and size them out to make it all work nicely. So yeah, that's like basically his entire body done. Even like the head is like super simple. Just even have these little bits to control like the bend of his like crown thing, whatever. Yeah, and his hands are just kind of like the same, you know, Rigify hands, but you can also kind of like move around them individually instead of them being attached to the body, even though I think they do kind of respond to they don't even respond to the chest, just the root. So that's all that. But his eyes, like his eyes and Caine's eyes are actually the same, where you can kind of pull these around to kind of like change their location and size. And of course, these actually control the irises and yeah, iris and pupil. So you can make them as big, or not as big as you want technically, but really big and really small. So they both have those. And also the Boolean eyelids, of course, because all the characters have something like that. And then this is where he looks. And of course, you always want to separate the eyes a lot of the time. And you even have like a specific, you know, thing just for making his eyes asymmetrical, because of course they're gonna have that there most of the time. It's just more easy to actually have them symmetrical when you're actually building the rig and everything, because that's how all the things, like everything likes being symmetrical. That's like literally everything you need to know about him. It's pretty standard stuff. There isn't really that many like kind of details you need to care about. Except one thing I will say is that there's a glitch going on with his eyes, and I'll try and replicate it by just resetting the file. Oh, there it is. I almost thought it was solved for a second, but it wasn't. So yeah, I don't know why his like the materials of his like eyes are doing this. They're basically like it's just like a generated kind of gradient that's kind of being like pulled back that reveals the iris like transparency, and it reveals the iris under it. And just for some reason it just goes completely invisible, and like sometimes with like Caine or whatever, or if he's like in a different location in the world, it's like kind of messes up in a different way. So yeah, I don't really know like why it's doing that at all, but the weird thing that is like there is about it is that like it's solved really easily, because like you can just like take any bone at all and just kind of grab it, don't even move it, and it just like resets itself. So I don't really like know why any of that's happening. I don't know if you like I feel like it's just like the generated part of this that's messing something up. Like I want to try and like I'm considering like a UV unwrapping the eye and trying to do it like that, but it's also like a lot of work for something that I've already like completely sorted out in this way. But so I mean, like if you have some like sort of idea of like why that's even happening in the first place, that'd be nice to know, because if I'm going to release these models to a bunch of people, I don't want them like freaking out that their eyes are like all broken and all that. So yeah, I really need help with that. because there's not really that much like going on here, so I don't really know what's going wrong. Yeah, I guess the one other thing in his model is actually over here in his switches. I actually have the glow from episode 3 of him holding his breath. You just turn that on and he starts glowing, which of course I used to there, and then I have Pomni still in this file. Yeah, basically all this is just a solidify where you have the driver turning it on and off, and the material changes on the outside. So I have this like extra little glow material as well. So yeah, that's just like a really simple setup to make him glow. He didn't have any other switches, so I just kind of wanted to add something to give him like the switches bone anyway. But yeah, I think that's it for him. So I can go to Caine next. And of course, right as I boot up Caine, you can see the eye problem happening again. But for some reason, this is like exclusively the red bit of the eye, and this bit is exclusively like the eye how it should like normally be, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I just as usual grab any bit and it resets itself. So that's all good. Yeah, Caine was another one where I knew exactly what to do from the beginning, because I knew lattices were going to be like the main key to actually making his whole mouth kind of work as it should. And of course, just before that, the rest of his body is just kind of a rigified meta rig. Plus, free bones for the Caine and the hat and the switches. You have the Caine controls. You can like give it to different hands or just kind of delete it in general. Super simple. But yeah, for his mouth, basically it's just, a lattice. So yeah, I can see the lattice. That's just kind of very basic controlling his mouth. As you can see, each one of these bones pulls up a bit of it, moves it around. And there are a bunch of different controls to like move each little bit as you want. So it's nice and like expandable. You can really create like a bunch of different expressions as you need to, and bend it around a ton. Thanks to the rigified properties, you can really easily stretch the arms. So it's great for Caine. But yeah, that's like the entire like interesting part of his rig. Just very nice and easy to pull around the different parts of his mouth. You can like do whatever you could possibly need to do. Yeah, of course his eyes are the same as Kinger's, so I don't need to explain that again. But yeah, I guess the other thing is that Bubble's included in this kind of file as well. And of course, there's like not even that many controls at all for them. It's just like the mouth opening, open and close. And also the main control, and then the eye like shape control where you just pull it down to blink and then pull it up to make a bigger eye. And that's like basically it. Except of course, in the switches, I actually have the tongue controls where you can turn on Caine's tongue, and then the next one is actually Bubble's tongue. So you can just kind of, control the tongue from this section as well, and all the bones turn on and off alongside it. So you can just very easily kind of toggle it however you want. Yeah, then now we can end with Zooble, who's definitely the most interesting out of all of them, considering, the circumstances. It's a very interesting rig to deal with. Yeah, so this is Zooble, and as you can tell, the main draw of this rig is actually that you can easily control where each like limb is being placed on the body. So if you go and select these empties near the top of each limb, you can go over here and control the placement, where it just kind of, places in every single socket, and it fully like maps onto the rig itself, so it moves perfectly as you'd expect. Yeah, and each one of them has it, even their head. All the controls follow along with it. So yeah, it's very customizable. And of course here we have the actual limb rig themselves, where it's like you can really see like this is there's like a big bend kind of going through the entire thing with controls, and even like the wrist controls. The wrist, technically the ankle as well, depends on whichever one is on there at the time. Yeah, if I reset them all, and then I can try and turn them back to a normal thing. I have the FK switch here where you can turn it from an IK sort of thing to an FK sort of thing. So yeah, here you can just turn it from, following the root only to following the actual FK bones I have in here. So it depends on which, limb is actually the bottom. So you can actually use those as the feet no matter what. So yeah, I can just, these are the normal FK bones that still like bend the rig pretty well, even though this one actually kind of detaches from the socket a little bit, but it still works. Yeah, they all work really nicely as well. So you can animate them both in FK and IK, which is why I wanted to use this one for Gangle, because like I had to like figure out, like I found an IK solution for Gangle, and I found like a very simple FK solution for Gangle, but I didn't really find like one that was like good for both, and I feel like this is good for both. I actually have to I'll actually try and reset all of the positions of everything. So yeah, as you can see, the default position of everything is just kind of off to the side. Yeah, they all work, they all like kind of latch on perfectly anyway, so you don't really need to... Okay, I guess I just moved those at some point, but I'll move them back before I sell a file. Yeah, I made every part separately, and then up here we have the head rig. Also, it's pretty like standard stuff. I just have controls for the antennae, and also like the actual neck, which is like its own little bendy bone thing, and the head follows it perfectly as well. And yeah, the eyes are similar to Caine and Kinger, but they're also kind of different. Where I have the eyelids for the small eyes, pretty standard stuff. Except down here, I had to make the eyelashes move separately because I didn't really know how to like perfectly sync them up with the actual like eyelid bone. So that's how I deal with that. But for the bigger eye, it's kind of like the opposite situation where the Boolean is actually cutting out the eyelid, and just use these bones to kind of like pull it back and shrink the eye in. And with this one, you can even like tilt it to give me like an angry expression or whatever. I had to like put in a lot of effort just to like make sure the Boolean doesn't actually like squash itself in and completely ruin the Boolean modifier. But it still kind of screws up at some point. So if you like pull it down really far, then it will kind of mess up. But yeah, at that point you kind of want to close the eye anyway, so it actually works out pretty well. And even on top of that, you can even like pull this back and pull back the eye, because apparently this is like the default state of the eye. I always thought it was just like the purple eyelid was always on there, but it actually isn't always on there for some reason. But yeah, and you have the like iris controls if you ever like want them. Oh yeah, and I'm very proud of this Ragatha like altered eye looking thing. It just looks really, it's like perfect for the actual shape of the eyes itself. It's really satisfying. Yeah, one of the more interesting things I put in here is actually this make your own Zooble part kind of setup, where I actually had like have this ruler to like denote where like each individual part actually has their elbow or like the knee or whatever you want it to be, and also like where the connector is and where the wrist or the ankle is. So you can always just kind of like super simply build onto this like rig itself. Like I could do it really quick. So I just add a slider, turn it aside, shrink it down, and pull out. Just add a bunch of subdiv, and just parent that to the rig. Automatic weights, and like it just automatically works. Everything's super nice and clean. Even on top of that, it has its own empty, so you can always have the, instantly place the arm part like super quickly and easily. And of course the same, function with the FK setup. So yeah, that's definitely something I am definitely like proud of having in here, and I think it's gonna be really fun for some people. So yeah, I can just do that. Obviously, you should probably copy the actual like base rig itself before you do that, so you don't lose it. But yeah, I really like that. Okay, it's me from the future again, just to say I've changed the empty connection thing to just the master bone, so you can just control it in pose mode. So yeah, that's way more convenient. Yeah, I mean, I think that's basically it for all of them. Definitely a lot more like fine-tuned details if you really want them. You can just ask me on like Discord or something, or on my Discord server, I guess. And I'll definitely tell you everything you need to know. Even though I am selling the models, I'm also going to like kind of just be very free about just like telling you how to make them, basically, if you ever care about doing that. But yeah, if you just want that information, just ask me directly. But this is just kind of like an overview really quick. And that's everything. Just to repeat it, they're available for download on Gumroad, where each model is $5 individually, with Pomni being free, and then being $15 if you buy them as a group. And let me know what you want me to do with the whole beginner tutorial idea I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Anyway, go to my Linktree to find all the accounts where I post all the renders that I've done of each of them. And thanks for watching.